to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple of housekeeping things before we get started here. Andy has asked that I move up the fire department, so that would be under new business I. We'll move that up to the beginning so that he can make a 6:30 p.m. meeting. Otherwise, we have a number of guests with us tonight. If we just asked that we have an appropriate record, that everybody gets signed in on the sheet, we can get some more sheets if anybody needs them. And that if anybody's going to go to the podium, just so that Kristen can get names, just make sure you say your name slowly and clearly so that we can hear it and we know who we're talking to. It helps easier, because right now the only camera we have is the one back in the corner. So if we have to come back and look, it's easier if we know the name rather than trying to figure it out by the back of your head. So, right, with that, we'll start with our council activity reports. We had a meeting with some folks from the library, discussed where that's at now that we've got some architectural plans in. Moving forward with that, one of the things that we discussed is creating an ad hoc library board. That's under our new business later, so we'll get to that. So I'll sort of save the discussions for that, but there's still some momentum with the library. I think that's great. We had a policies and procedures meeting. Minutes from that came out earlier. Looked at some of our bylaws. We discussed the ordinance on animals in town and elected to recommend that that stay the same. Otherwise, gosh, we've been so busy the last few months on that committee that the last meeting is slipping my mind. I don't think we had much. Neil, I'll let you pick up where I might have forgotten. And then on Thursday of last week, we met here at City Hall. It was myself, Tarek, Jen, Ron, and along with Brad Melhop, along with representatives of Nature Energy, who understand they've signed the land agreement with Mr. Furchi to purchase the land. They're continuing to move forward with that project, so we'll get rocking and rolling. We've got some things to do there in terms of a conditional use permit within the city. I reached out to the league to get some ideas on ways that we might be able to suit their needs, and hopefully we can follow up on that in the next few weeks. But that moved forward. We had lunch with those guys afterwards as well, and yeah, they seem to be making great progress in getting things going here. So with that, Neil.
Yes, policy and procedure, Wednesday the 12th. The only thing I can think of, we did discuss per diem for the council, and that's on tonight's agenda. Board equalization, Thursday the 13th, nobody showed, so that was a short meeting. The council retreat at Queen Bee's on Tuesday the 18th. Some of the topics are on our agenda tonight. I had a Green Roof board meeting on Wednesday the 19th. They were happy that Public Works put their flag pole back. The rope had fallen, and Ron authorized them to do that, which was appreciative. Friday, I went to the Let's Go Fishing event. And then I believe it was Thursday, I had dinner with a couple reps from Nature Energy and some of the council. We had a toast to their purchase agreement.
Okay. I'll just say one of the things that we chatted about, they know that they're going to need to do a conditional use permit, and it's sort of a holdup in terms of chicken or the egg. Do they develop it and plat it out before the conditional use permit, or does that come after? So one of the things that we explored in doing is seeing if we can do the conditional use permit hearing prior to them purchasing the land and submitting the application, and maybe doing some sort of a memorandum of understanding or something that we might expect to see following the formal hearing. I'm still doing it in all of the public forums and things like that, but just sort of preempting it so that everybody has a little more assurance of what might be sought after once we get to that stage. So, Megan.
Okay, it's been a busy couple weeks. Tuesday, I had the lodging tax committee meeting. We talked about promoting town and country days and some other things. Wednesday, I was at the library meeting that was already mentioned. Thursday, I took part in the rural child care, Minnesota Child Care Zoom meeting. which I have some information on to go into later. Friday, unofficially though, I went to the fire department to have them talk me through the cascade system, and I agree we should figure out when they can get a new one. Tuesday, I had the council retreat with everybody else, and I'm missing something, but I don't remember what it is. If I do, I'll jump in.
Environmental board.
Environmental board, yes. Oh, that was really exciting. So there's some, the Stearns County guy came and talked to us about pollinators. There's some really interesting opportunities for the city, so we should look further into that later on.
Gene?
Well, we had the Board of Equalization, and I had an EDAP meeting, which Megan was at,
Yes, I was,
and then the working session.
early,
Yep. That's it.
Paul?
right there.
Excuse me, the Board of Equalization, when they had a special working session at Queen Bee's, and then also the Trail Board, which we received a notice that there was, we see some funding for the trail.
Yeah, and I understand there's going to be a release coming out for that, so that'll be exciting. That's awesome news. One thing I did forget, we had a safety board meeting last week. Biggest thing there is we're starting to look at revising and updating the emergency operations plan. That's been divvied out. Chief, I saw your email here as I'm looking for some other things. Yes, I'll send you the Word docs. Last week was just a nightmare. So, yep, it's coming. All right, department head reports. Ron?
Okay, thank you. First of all, the spring cleanup is this Saturday from 8 to 11 a.m., and that is rain or shine. We've had a number of inquiries about that, and so we will be up there. Compost, we are going to open that tomorrow morning, so RV dump and most of the parks that will be mid-May before they are opened up. Street sweeping will be out there, so I ask residents, if you do have a sidewalk abutting the curb, please sweep it off and spruce it up a little bit. Reservations for the parks, I think right now we have roughly 25 of them already, so if anybody wants to make the reservations, you can do that online or at City Hall here. The environmental board, just to spin off what Megan had said there, that SWCD, their talk was on planting anything other than lawns, basically the pollinators, and also we talked a little bit about, or afterwards, do we want to do this for a larger audience than just our committee? The one thing that the city has to do yet before we would allow, or the no mow may, would be to change the ordinance with which I did get a couple of them, so we can look at that. Let's see, then webinar is actually going to be on the 26th. I just got an email on that, and that's actually a nationwide webinar. Trail board, we were also at that, and just a bit of good information. We did receive the grant that we were working on for the trail. That is in the amount of $440,000, and that is for fiscal year 2027, and it is for phase 1 of the trail. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ron? All right, Tarek?
All right, in addition to the meetings that were already mentioned, I participated in them as well, which include the council retreat, EDAP, the lodging tax meeting, the library, policies and procedures, environmental board, and then also a couple other events here. Well, Megan mentioned already the child care, or state of child care in the state of Minnesota. That was an interesting call that we're on. And yeah, she has more details later on that. And then I also participated in the clerk's training at Stearns County. The topic was special assessments and how to apply special assessments, so I thought that was quite interesting. And then we had a winter events brainstorming session, so that was kind of going over the winter events and how we can better coordinate and create kind of a cohesive story and theme among all the events in that during the holiday season.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Tarek? Right. Back up on my agenda. Anything here for our public forum? Right. I didn't want to make assumptions as to why everyone's out there, but I think we understand. Okay, with nobody here for our public forum, we'll move on then to the adoption of our consent agenda. We do have one update on the refuge licenses. That's on page 1 for our update here tonight. Otherwise, we're looking at the minutes found on page 1 of our regular agenda. The vouchers totaling $348,969.22. The appointment of a member to the Park and Tree Board, along with the gambling licenses on page 5. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda, or does anybody want something pulled?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Hertzberg, seconded by Brick, to adopt the consent agenda. All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Carries. All right, new business I, Andy with the Centricare agreements.
All right. Basically, I'm here we're looking at adopting the medical services from the Centricare for us, medical directive. We do not currently have a legit medical director or directive at this point, and we'd like to adopt that through Centricare. They currently do all of our trainings for our EMRs and things of that nature. And basically the only changes we're going to be making is we're going to be adding baby aspirin onto our truck and what's called an iGel, it's an airway. So otherwise we already have a glucometer that we use. In the future, we're looking at maybe adding additional things, but that would be an additional contract.
How many of your firefighters are first responders or paramedics as well?
Everyone.
Okay.
We're all EMR or higher.
Let me rephrase that. So how many then are working for Centricare as an ambulance?
I believe it's 6.
So, a fair number.
So, yes.
Has Bill Spooner had the chance to look at this? I know he's been out for a while on vacation.
I have not had them look at it.
Because I will say, I read through it after, was it policies, procedures, or the police and fire meeting? We discussed it a little bit. I looked through it, it's all, as far as I can see, a Centricare contract. I'd be in favor of approving it, but I'd just ask that we do so contingent on Bill Spooner giving it a search for red flags, because that's his job, not mine. I don't know if that's okay with you,
Yep, that'd be just fine.
and then I can sign it once he gives us the all clear.
For sure.
If there's any further discussion, otherwise a motion would be in order on that.
I'll make the motion to approve the contract from Centricare and the Painesville Fire Department contingent on Bill Spooner's agreement.
There's a motion to approve the contracts contingent on Bill Spooner's review and approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Hertzberg. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything else on here tonight, Andy? I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, I just look through some things here. If I could just ask for head nods, is there anybody out in the gallery not here for our Chamber of Commerce discussion? Okay. Do you all want to wait while we do all of our other business, or should we have that discussion now? Okay, I'm seeing some head nods to that. I'm okay with moving it ahead. I think that makes sense. And if you all want to stick around, it's a public meeting. We'd love to have visitors for the rest of it, but nobody's taken me up on that yet, so we'll see. So launching into, we do have an update here. I got an email from Paul Bugby over the weekend, forwarded on so that it's in our council packet. Are there enough copies of it out there for everyone? We can make more if anybody wants it, otherwise I can read it into the record as well. It is a little bit long, but I know, Gene, I've made you read some of my long missives, so.
I'm not reading it.
I know. I guess, Tarek, maybe can you open us up with why we're having this discussion and where we are?
Yeah, this started, I would say, as soon as we formed the board, I guess, and, I mean, it's not really a formal board, it's more of a kind of put together by people who we think would be interested in participating in this board. Obviously, Paul Bugby's part of it, and Emma's part of it. We have a couple other people as well. I mean, Mark, you're part of the board as well. And then it's just, we've had, I would say, a handful of meetings or more so far. And I think we're just struggling to kind of find a direction and kind of what we're doing with this board or what the board's purpose is. So I think the main discussion is, you know, what do we want out of this board and how are we going to achieve the best results that we can with this.
So I will share, I've just been looking around, I don't see that everybody does have a copy of it, so I'll just read it out loud here. So this is from Paul Bugby. It was sent Saturday at 3:10 in the afternoon. It says, "Hello, Tarek and friends. Thank you for the reminder of Monday evening's city council meeting where the local lodging tax will be discussed. Unfortunately, Kella, Ben, and I will be attending the Minnesota State FFA annual conference in Minneapolis that evening and will be unable to attend the meeting. As such, please let me share some of my thoughts on the tax. I have been a proponent of the lodging tax because I believe that it allows Painesville to better compete with other communities and tourist destinations for tourism business. Because of our beautiful lakes, Rice and Coronas, and our relatively close proximity to the Twin Cities market, I sincerely believe that our community should be able to command a larger portion of the Twin City tourist market as compared to Brainerd, Alexandria, and other northern Minnesota destinations. Tourism brings new money into the community and has the potential to strengthen our overall local economy, including our bars, restaurants, gas stations, gift shops, real estate sales, and other businesses, in addition to our lodging properties. Although a 3% lodging tax is burdensome to our guests, many are accustomed to paying similar taxes and lodging property service fees elsewhere. As long as we can deliver an exceptional lodging and vacation experience at our properties and within this community, guests won't complain about the tax. Quality is remembered long after the price is forgotten. The principal premise behind a tourism lodging tax is that pooled resources can achieve a better outcome than individual efforts. These pooled resources should not simply be restricted to the aggregate of 2 lodging facilities, Bugby Hive Resort and Painesville Inn and Suites, but include as many other components within the community, including the Chamber of Commerce, our schools, local merchants, local attractions, city and township governmental units, agriculture, and others. Just because our lodging properties serve as the financial conduit, we must all work together in order for us to grow hospitality in our community. If the community doesn't want to be involved, then I would suggest that each of our lodging establishments could better utilize the tax dollars for our own marketing endeavors. With community support, there's no reason that Painesville's hospitality industry can't be on a scale parallel to the Brainerd Lakes area in Minnesota or the Dells in Wisconsin. That said, we all have to begin thinking outside the box and working together to achieve these higher goals and objectives. It's easy to find many uses for a few $1,000s to subsidize new or repetitive local attractions and events, but that's not the intention of establishing a tourism lodging tax. We need to set our sights much higher by exploring ideas that are centered around hospitality as a significant industry in our community. Think of it in terms of developing or expanding our industrial park, our schools, or our healthcare industries. I've said this before and I'll continue to say it. The money generated from the local lodging tax must be dedicated to tourism promotion and development. These are not government subsidies. These are not Chamber of Commerce subsidies. These are not community development subsidies. These are not special event subsidies, etc. These are monies dedicated to the purpose of bringing tourism dollars into our community. As such, putting heads in our beds also brings ancillary revenues, directly or indirectly, to all other business components in our community as well. Our local governmental units sanction the tourism tax and appropriately determine who shall administer the funds. Appropriately, they have designated the Painesville Area Chamber of Commerce as the fund administrator. The Chamber, appropriately, has formed a tourism tax advisory committee made up of representatives from the city and township, the Chamber, and of course local lodging properties. It is the responsibility of this committee to determine how lodging tax dollars are allocated. It is the responsibility of this committee to formulate a plan for building our community's hospitality industry. By all rights, the Tourism Tax Advisory Committee should be setting the annual budget for all of the tax dollars generated. That budget needs to include allocations for a part-time administrator, consultants when needed, and long-range plans and action items designed to build hospitality through the Painesville area. Any activities or project proposals should first come through the Tourism Tax Committee and receive their approval before implementation. This isn't your typical small-town pancake and sausage fundraiser, and it's okay to let the fund grow for a year or two. Let's spend the money on well-thought-out programs versus short-term projects just for the sake of spending. Jacob Bertram is a very capable choice for administering and leading this hospitality development challenge. But we have to remember that he does so not as the chamber administrator, but as the tourism tax community administrator. He is capable of wearing many hats, and as the administrator, he should be reporting to the tourism tax committee, who reports to our respective city and township officials. A local tourism tax, lodging tax, provides an opportunity for building hospitality into a significant industry for local communities. Why not Painesville? We consistently overlook the many natural attributes of our community and surrounding area. Lake Coronis was once described as the second most beautiful lake in Minnesota. Who among us would disagree? Fishing, hunting, and water recreation are tremendous natural attributes of our area, yet we fail to recognize that people throughout the United States visit us exactly for these reasons. We have established some of the most inviting and enjoyable hiking and biking trails in Minnesota, yet many trail enthusiasts haven't a clue that they exist. Agritourism is fast becoming an established destination of choice. Oh my God, what we can't offer by way of all of the exciting things happening in agriculture right here in our own backyard. And from a personal perspective, who isn't fascinated by industry and manufacturing? Our industrial park offers some of the most innovative and interesting facets of manufacturing to be found anywhere, and more. Why not showcase all that we have? It's easy to dwell on our community's shortcomings and challenges, but focusing on our strengths and our opportunities are what will propel us forward. In my mind, hospitality can be our community's new frontier. Build it and they will come. Should there be any question on whether or not to continue the tourism tax program, I think we've got to, at the least, give it another year or two to evolve and to research options for getting the best bang for our bucks. I'm very sorry to be missing the meeting Monday evening. Please share my thoughts and comments with those in attendance. Sincerely, Paul Bugby. Right, I'll start with the council to see if anybody has thoughts. I have some, but I'll reserve them for the end. I always start on my left, so can I start with you tonight, Paul? Shake it up a little bit.
Sure.
Your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts on this are, I think a lot of it boils down to miscommunication between the council and the chamber of what should be expected of each other. And I think if we could come to a meeting and a consensus of what is expected of each other, things would go a lot smoother than what they have been.
Okay.
And that's what I have.
All right. Jean, did you have anything?
Well, Paul spoke very well and made a lot of good comments about, I mean, he touched everything. I kind of agree there's some miscommunication, and I totally agree that the tourism tax dollars, they're not for events, they're for promotions. And that's our main focus, and that's what we want, is to promote Painesville. So I think we just have to kind of figure out how to do that and how to get it done. I think it's a lot for Jacob to do both. I mean, he's also works full-time, and I just think maybe he needs help, an assistant or something, because it's hard for him to, you know, he's being told what to do, but then he's got to try and get it done, and maybe he just needs more help.
I guess, Jacob, I'll ask to come back, because I have that sort of same concern as well, and I know we're all very busy and have different ways of juggling, and I'm not trying to question you, but figure out more how we can support it. But, Megan, can I skip you since you're on the board and come back? I want your thoughts.
I was prepared. Okay, yes.
Okay, Neil?
Not officially, but.
Yes, I think in the letter, number 6 and 7 are very important. It's the responsibility of the committee to determine how lodging tax dollars are allocated. And the people on that committee have to come up with these ideas. How are we going to promote the tourism? And it ain't up to Jacob to come up with the ideas. That is what this committee is for. So that committee needs to do their job, I guess. And I don't think we need to change a lot. We just need to do our jobs.
Okay. Megan?
So, as Sean mentioned, it's not an official committee, so I'm not actually on it. And I'm there in a personal capacity, not necessarily one from the city. But I think, it's a new committee, and the lodging tax itself in Painesville is a new thing, and it's complicated as to what it can even be used for. There are restrictions that we're kind of all sorting through for the first time, and it's going to take time. It's not going to be a super smooth road while we figure it out. I guess my suggestion would be to form the board officially, making sure that there's equal representation from a lot of different aspects, and that committee can then come forward with, create a mission statement and bylaws and yearly goals and things like that they agree on together, so that it can be something that we go forward from there, so we know where we're going or where they're going, in case I don't continue to be a part of it. But I think that it's a really good thing, and I think everybody involved wants to promote Painesville as well as they can. I think it's just, since it's not a firmly defined thing, there are different ideas as to how to go about that. And I think it would probably be best to just make it official and then have the committee work together to come up with what exactly they're going to do.
Yeah. I guess, I came to the meeting last week and just shared the invitation to come tonight. One of the things that I've continued to think about is I think a lot of the problems we're hearing are probably more growing pain related than they are anything else. This is a new thing for the area. This is a new thing that we're doing. What does it look like? How are we all doing this together? I agree with Paul's comments in here that it's the responsibility of the committee to determine how it's allocated and that they should be setting the budget. I think I have some concern as I'm listening to the reports from Tarek and Megan on how the committee is making recommendations. I have concerns from members in the community on things that are being said but aren't followed up on, and we talked a little bit about that at the meeting, so I'm not going to belabor that again tonight, but that is what goes into my opinion. So from my perspective, I think one of the things that would be really helpful is, like Megan was talking about, making it more formal with some of the bylaws and guidelines. Something where an individual can look at the process and say, here's the idea that I have, how do I go about asking that it be implemented or following it? Jacob, we talked during the meeting and you referenced the statute. And just because I live it day to day, people don't read statutes. God, I wish they would sometimes. So I don't know if there's a way that we can dumb that down, those statutory requirements, into like a one-page sort of sheet that says, here's what you need to meet if you want to apply for these dollars. That might be something that's helpful as well. And then, I've got the concern, I'm going to trust whatever answer you give me, but the concern is are there too many hats being worn? And Tarek's full-time job is here for the city. Is it something where if the city took and made this advisory committee a city board rather than a chamber one, is it something that might be administratively managed easier through this? Those are the questions I have. I just want to have the conversation tonight. I'm not ready to take a vote tonight anyway. If a motion's called, I'll vote on it.
I'm not.
But I don't know that we're at the point of a vote right now. I just want to have the chat.
Sure, yeah.
I'll open it up to Jacob.
I'm Jacob Burcham, Executive Director. I just want to welcome everyone who's also here. We have Chamber Board members who are here. We have Mark Damon from the Township as well. We have Emma Twittle from the Painesville Inn and Suites. Behind, we have Matt Dickhauser, who was on our board, and he kind of was the founding leader to get this tax here. So we appreciate Matt joining us tonight. So there's a couple different opinions that were expressed on the board from the council, especially being that I would be the one, with my role, kind of setting the precedents and setting what we should be spending it on. I think that kind of is misinterpreted. I think it's kind of up to the advisory committee to find the ideas that need to be done and to create the proposal. If there's a certain place you want these lodging tax dollars to be spent, I'd say that proposal they should do their homework, they should get the proposal ready, and they should present that to then the advisory board, where from there they would deem it if it would be used underneath the state statute, and then go from there if the chamber board would approve that, being that falls underneath that. So it not necessarily needs to be under my shoulders as my role as a director, but also as the advisory committee council, same thing that Councilor Hertzberg said, that they should be doing part of their homework as well and get the proposal together. So that's, I guess, on that point. We all want to work together for the same goal. It seems like that's a common agreement, so we appreciate that, and we don't want to be splitting things up between just promoting the city and our area, or just promoting the township and their area. We want to make sure it's all together. So that's kind of one of the other things that we want to talk about or mention as well. Again, we've only been collecting for a year. I look back at the receipts. April 2022 was actually the first month that we got the funds last year. So we're in now a year totally with the funds. Still deciding on what can we qualify for that. I know, Sean, you mentioned kind of having an outline directive. I've been consulting with the Minnesota Convention and Visitor Bureau. We're a member with them. They're out of St. Paul. And they've been asking us, and that's who kind of came together and said other communities have this advisory committee that they reported to their chamber board, if being that the chamber's acting as visitor bureau for the area. They also suggested that we kind of go through the items and stay with the statute. There's a lot of resources on their website that had examples of funds that other communities try to use the funds for, and right clearly on there it says yes or no. For example, one community wanted to purchase high school band uniforms for their parade. Something like that, you could argue, would promote the town itself, but at the end of the day, it can't be used for those funds. Same thing when the proposal was for the Christmas lights downtown, that we're using those funds for those, being they don't directly promote the Painesville area, that they won't qualify underneath the statute. So that understanding, I guess, as the proposals come forward, then that committee can use their judgment based on what their knowledge is and deem it from there.
Is there a way to make the committee more formal? I mean, I know you already put out agendas and things like that. I don't know if there's minutes kept or anything, but, I mean, is there a way to sort of formalize membership and things like that? Have it run a little bit more effectively, or?
Yeah, I guess, and Sean, you haven't been attending much of the meetings. I know Tarek and Mike and both have. We put together the agenda, the minutes are recorded and shared. And then we are just putting on the direction of, as things come up, just like, and let the public know we are spending the money. A lot of people have said that we weren't, we're just keeping it and spending it on our own purposes. That's not true. We have a billboard on Highway 23 by Bork Lumber we're updating. We also were able to get a billboard on Interstate 94 by the Grand Depot on the Painesville exit. So that is actually up and running until July. That's the period that the council or the committee kind of recommended, and then that's what the chamber board approved on. So we are having those events going. Working on a summer map. We did pay for half of the fall maps last August. We're working on the summer map right now, and then just the general advertising. So kind of more of a formal meeting is what you're saying, Sean. It's definitely something that we can maybe look into, being that the board would have to have their input and their advisory board members to talk about that. And we can see from there, I think, would be understandable.
I think there is a process to formalize it, like if you create bylaws or something. You can look into it, but I think there's a process, yes.
But I also think we don't need to overcomplicate this either.
Well, yeah, but I think being able to take an official vote and making sure that there's like an
Yeah.
equal representation is kind of less complicating
Yeah.
in the long run.
Make sure there's a quorum.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and make sure there's a chair, a vice chair, a secretary. I mean, there's no formal positions either.
It's an advisory committee.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard and, saw it come up at the meeting we attended, Jacob, was, and I know from talking to Kayla on plenty of occasions, there's a lot of chamber member burnout from the same core group of people who help to plan events and run events. And there's always this push of, let's do more events and more events. But you can only do so much when you have the same regular bodies doing all of the work. And I think it's totally fair for those regular bodies to say, I can't do another event. Like that's just too much. So, I mean, how do we, and I guess it goes back to, you know, we're here because we have some growing pains. So how do we take the ideas that are coming to this committee, like the 5K triathlon, whatever it was that we were talking about doing this summer, and use those ideas to help build up momentum to get more community support for those things? And that might be rhetorical for tonight. I'm not asking you to have an answer to that, but it's something for all of us to think about, which is that we can't be sitting here saying, well, the chamber's not doing all of these events that we think they should be doing, when it's the same 4 or 5 people that are in charge of doing everything, and they all have 1 or 2 other jobs that they have to manage at the same time.
And I think the misconception there is being that the chamber is an event planning area. And these funds, we don't want to be focusing just on that, in my opinion. We want to look at the advertising in general. And if we do events, most of our events are bringing people from maybe the surrounding communities of London, Belgrade, Bruton. Potentially, the Town and Country Days would bring some people out of the normal realm of the Painesville area. So that's what we kind of want to be highlighting on. We want to bring people from the Duluth, Moorhead cities area rather than just the surrounding area. So looking at that, our events that we normally establish, they can and cannot be potentially under that, being that they only have a small amount of group that are there, but potentially growing into something bigger would definitely be something. But like you said, the same group of people plan the events, and if the idea was proposed and presented, kind of how we've been doing it, everyone takes their turn and steps up and tries to do the best they can to actually get something together, and not just force someone else, another entity, to do it and say, you better do this, otherwise we're going to retaliate. So just something to think about too. I think that if everyone kind of steps up and does something, if they really want to get this event and they think that other people would be coming in for this event, that could be a bridge that we cross at that time.
What is going to be the best way moving forward, Jacob, that we keep having this conversation so that everyone's, I don't want to say pleased, because we never please everyone, but at least aware of where things are going and how we keep things moving in a positive direction?
I guess if seeing like the proposals that are coming through, or things that, ideas that are coming down the board, is kind of what you're saying, like how do we know that, make sure that people who have these ideas are being listened to?
No, I'm thinking more, would it make sense for maybe you and Donna to come back in like next quarter? I'm thinking July, and we just pick up this conversation and say, how are things working and how's it going? Or is that putting too much formality into it and we should?
Potentially, but you do have 2 representatives that are actually on the advisory committee, so they'll be getting some of that. And then Jean is also on the chamber as an advisory role, so she's hearing a lot of things through there. So it looks like on the agenda, on the top part of every meeting, you have the department head reports and the council activity reports.
Yep.
That might be a good area to discuss what's going on.
And then we can report back to the rest of the council.
Okay.
So they're,
Absolutely.
so you're in the loop, we're in the loop.
Yep.
Everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from the council?
No, I think if somebody comes to the ad hoc or the advisory committee with something they want, a proposal, then they should be prepared to work with that proposal too. If they want to do a 5K run, whoever comes, they need to be part of that and not expect the chamber to do it all or somebody else to try and do the work. If you want to do something, you better put some skin in the game. So, that's just.
And if that proposal were to come, or an idea were to come to the advisory committee, then be talked about, and the advisory committee deems that is appropriate to use the funds for, to have it, and then goes to chamber board meeting, that group, I would recommend that they also come to the chamber board and not just solely think that only one member would report that back to the chamber board. It should be that group too that wants to have that event or that certain lodging funds to report that to the chamber board as well, so we don't miss any communication there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I agree with what Gene just said. I still think, and maybe what I heard from you is that it's not possible, but it would be nice to know, like, with every grant, you have an application that walks through the steps of filling out the grant application and the follow-up and things like that. So if we could have some sort of written guidelines, so that when people call City Hall, we can direct them to, hit up this part of the Chamber's website. It walks you through everything you need to know right there. Or, here's a written printout that we can send you or give to you when they come in. Maybe that's not possible from your conversations at the state level, but I would feel better just being able to say, yeah, go right to the Chamber, there's a process on their website that walks you through everything you need to do, rather than saying, go to the Minnesota Legislature and search for 175A.39.369.
Yeah. We'll leave it up to their attorneys to read
Yeah,
through that.
type in pi, and when you get to the end, you'll find the requisite statute.
Yeah, that might be something good that we can outline on our website. Like I said before, we're working with the Minnesota Convention and Visitor Bureau. We're not making this up. They are the ones that are helping with this.
Yep.
They recommended everything that we were doing. It seems to be working. Even on their website, they don't really certainly have, okay, this piece of paper can be used, this book can't. They don't really have a yes or no. They have Attorney General notes that were presented, and you can read through those as well. So they have a resource kit that would at least show what items work, that do qualify, and what items don't. But we can have an outline, a general outline on our website for people to research.
I think if that were there, it would at least address some of the citizen concerns that have been brought to my attention. Where it's like, okay, go to the website, follow that protocol, and get in touch with Jacob or whomever if you have questions about what applies or what qualifies. I'm good with where we are. I want to leave things. I would make one suggestion, and that's that somebody make a motion to formally nominate Megan to the lodging board,
Tax.
so that she's, the lodging tax board, so that she's serving on there in an official capacity.
Oh, thanks.
That makes sense.
So, but I think we might have more comments.
I do.
Okay. Yep.
So, Tom, last name Oestrich, spelled Oestreich. I was named after seeing a chart. I figured I'd better spell it out. It's a really tough one. Thank you all for hearing us. I think Jacob and the entire chamber has been doing a fantastic job. I'm new to the chamber. I'm now the vice president of the chamber. I think one of the things that we are missing here is a chance to vision in what's happening. The formality of putting the groups together is a great idea, and having that information out there, and I think Jacob already addressed that part of it, but the visioning is what we've been missing all along, and I think everybody in this room wants to grow this community, and if we can bring in additional revenues and make a difference, it's huge for our community. And I think I'm going to stand on the podium and say Jacob has been doing a phenomenal job for the promotion and the things that I'm seeing that have happened, and the mapping and the information that's out there to bring more people and resources to our community to keep things going and moving. So I think what we would gain would be a chance to have the board and others to get together and have some more conversations about what it is we really want to get done in this town. And I've said this before, and I strongly believe that the more we get together and talk about some of these things, the farther we're going to get ahead on making a difference in this community. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Peterson.
Hi, Steve Peterson. All good discussion. I'm glad to be a part of it. Just to build and maybe to offer something. We, as the foundation, as you, I think, all know, for 5 years, do grant rounds. And Jacob, I'm happy to share the framework for that. It's not too complicated. We didn't put it together. It was community giving that did it across 10 different communities in central Minnesota. It states sort of the parameters of what works and what doesn't for a grant. And then, and it's really the onus of the grantee to make sure, to your point, that you're in compliance, and it's very clear, and you ask for what it's for and how much money it is, and I think you all know that the city has done a number of these themselves. So you could copy and certainly copy that one. I don't think we need to make it too complicated, and I will forward that information to you so you have it. And so just to build on this, serving on the Trails Committee with several of you, we mentioned that we just got the money. I think there is opportunity to do some promotion and digital promotion around our bike trails and what we have with the Glacial Lakes completion and other things for the future. I think that would be one, and so I'd be interested in maybe once we get it up and going, to actually submit, maybe on the part of the Trails Committee, something that could be used for, Twin Cities people looking for an 80 miles away for a wonderful bike ride around the lake and all. I mean, that fits this perfectly. And as we get the Glacial Lakes Trail completed, and many of you have heard me say this, using e-bikes and making this a destination center for people to bike across central Minnesota, being right between Willmar and St. Cloud, all sorts of upside for future tourism. So just giving an example, I think what could really work based on the building that we're doing together here already. So thank you for listening.
Right. Yep.
Council, Jeff Bertram, 662 Spruce Street, Painesville. I'm here tonight as a resident of Painesville since 1986, a chamber member since 1986, a former city council member, current county commissioner, and most importantly, as Jacob Stad. I'm a little troubled by what I've heard second and third hand, and it kind of confuses me a little bit with what's going on. And we all know the great things that this community has done when we work together. And we all know what we had to do when people weren't working together. We just had to kind of separate them out and do our own thing. You can make this process as formal as you want. The baseball stadium didn't get built by the city, and the city really didn't have a lot to do with it. The trail got built, a lot of stuff was written on the back of a napkin. We didn't have formal bylaws, we didn't have a lot of things. The township came to us at the time, and 12 of us made that trail happen, $3.5 million. The $440,000 we just got, everybody that was involved with it knows who got that money and who secured and how we went through that process. It was a cooperative effort, but it was people that aren't getting paid for it making it happen. And so I think the biggest concern for me is that there's a disconnect between what's really happening and what people want to have happen. I read through all the minutes, I read through all the agendas, and I would guess that not one of you have done that. The idea is, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, Tark, I know this is sensitive because the meetings go on, and I ask who came to the meeting, what happened. And I just mentally, I maybe should have got involved earlier, but, and I'm thinking, well, okay, well, they were there. Why is this being said? There is a billboard in Painesville, there is a billboard on 994. They've gone through Explore Minnesota website, the brochure, billboards, resort hotel websites, Google Maps, tourism conference, trade shows that Councilor Hertzberg came up with, which is a great new idea, Governor's Fishing Opener, pub crawl. So all these things were talked about. They're all in the minutes, they're all on the agenda, and if you knew it, Tark, it's unfortunate the council, I don't think, knew it. The attractions, they've identified the attractions probably beyond what you folks have thought about. Lake Cronus, the Cronus Cafe, trails, state, local, parks, beaches, airport, Stoneville Trails, 18-hole golf course, between Willmar and St. Cloud, great meeting place, Historical Society, Crow River Trail, Summer Concert Series, City Beach, events, the Town and Country Days and other things, and the baseball stadium. So they've identified all this, and in a year, I'm impressed. And so now they've raised $40,000, $12,500 is, I think it's from the township, if I got that right, and from Bugby, $12,500 from the hotel. It's not even a year old. Their first receipt was April. I commend the entire chamber board, because I was there for 12 years. As this is an earlier discussion from a lot of people in this room probably don't know, the city says they can't belong to the chamber, 90% of the cities around a 60-mile radius all belong to the chamber. Thank God individual members decided to join the chamber. But again, let's work together. We can't, the meeting attendance, if people don't show up or don't report back to their respective bodies, Mark's here, he takes it back to the township. I've been at township meetings. I haven't paid attention here, I'll have to start paying attention, but just, the chamber's got an $80,000 budget. You've got a part-time economic development director. That budget's got to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm guessing. You want to formalize it, all what you need to do is just take a little bit of time and just help maybe connect some of the dots. We have the director as a position, we have the budget in the budget, so why don't you utilize some of that and just help this all? I was at the talent show on Saturday, as the mayor was. City had nothing to do with that, chamber had nothing to do with that. What were there, 500 people were there, what a great event. So things can be made to happen. The community foundation, really, city has nothing to do with that, township has nothing to do with it. It's the community. And so I hope, I worked 3.5, 4 months now, trying to build collaboration throughout the 3rd District in Stearns County. And I want to continue to do that. But rather than saying, silos are out of date. I grew up on the farm. Farmers don't build silos anymore. They have egg banks. They include it. Winston Churchill always said, the further you want to go to the future, look to the past. And so look what's been successful and then latch onto that. Get the people that built the stadium, get the people that did the community foundation, get the people that built the trail, get those people together, and then say, how can we do things that are going to make Painesville a standout? It's not a 5K run, for God's sakes. You might get people from Belgrade and Richmond there. You're looking for people from Moorhead, Marshall, Duluth, and Minneapolis. I belong to the chamber, we do, in Alexandria, Glenwood, Annandale, St. Cloud, a host of communities, and they have this lodging tax. They do full-page advertising in the tourism, they go to the shows, a whole host of things. That's what you do. You don't do a pancake breakfast. And Paul nailed it. And the letter that Paul wrote to you in February of last year to everybody, he said, be careful, because throughout the state, when these funds are created, oftentimes governmental entities try to take the proceeds. So I told Paul, he sent me that email, and I told Paul, well, you've got some foresight, because again, how in the world are we going to promote, what, Painesville Township, if you break away? Are we going to put on a billboard, welcome to Painesville Township? We're one community, it's 5,000 people, we're lucky, we have a lake, we have a strong business industrial community. So let's just focus on what we really need to focus on and not spend time formalizing it and doing bylaws and it's a simple process. It's an advisory committee, everything I read, it's an advisory committee that was kind of just made up and said, let's get together and see what people think. Then it gets taken to the chamber board and they decide, and that's the way it should be. Paul Bugbee doesn't decide, the hotel doesn't decide, the township doesn't decide, and the city doesn't decide, nor should they. Any one of those entities shouldn't make that decision. But we can't have it where I want to do a 5K run, and then you do the work, and then leave the meeting. If anybody wants to do anything, in my opinion, and as a chamber member, and as a resident of Painesville, I believe I have a right to have that opinion, you need to come, just like I can't call Tark up on Monday and say, well, I want the council to do this, just do it. He'd say, well, you got to put something together, you got to come to the committee, and then the committee is going to recommend to the council, and then the council is going to take action. That's the process. So when you say there's no process, there is a process. You go to the advisory committee, they have the discussion, and then they decide that they're going to recommend it to the board, and then the board decides. And it's a volunteer board, as it should be, and I think they can continue to achieve great things. So let's, if we want to do anything, I think if it's in a month or in a quarter, everybody read everything. And all the minutes and the agendas and everything, start coming to the meetings, start reporting back to your entities, and then come up with a list of saying, well, why don't we do this and this? But formalize it, it's not going to solve the miscommunication, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Tarek, you have something to say.
I mean, I would agree with what everybody has said so far, in that I think it boils down to communication, and I think that's where we need to get better on it, and I'll give you an example. You mentioned that you've seen all the agendas and all the minutes. Well, I've been to every meeting, and I've only seen one set of minutes. So you're privy to more than what I've seen so far. I don't know where the other minutes are. And then we also want to hit the ground running and make sure that this is a success. So one of the things that the city did was we had a billboard out on Highway 23, and we offered it up right away for the lodging tax advisory board, or for the tourism board to be using right away. We also last summer put together an activity map, and we also handed that over to the committee to work on right away as well. So I mean, we want it to be successful. We want to make sure that the things that we pass on kind of continue and grow, as well as support other things going on around here as well. And I think we spent maybe 3 meetings or so talking about events and doing events, and to my understanding is that our role is maybe brainstorm, come up with ideas, and then the chamber needs to approve these events, or, you know, they're the ones that need to decide on it. And so far, I don't know if, you know, these ideas are presented to them formally, because I never heard back on whether or not, you know, these events have been approved or disapproved, or how, or when the meeting is. I mean, in the end, I realized that, yes, the meetings were not approved. But I just think that there needs to be better communication. I think that's where the shortfall has been. I mean, we have to find a way, whether it's formalizing it more, which I think will be a good idea, or some other way to make sure that there's better communication.
And I think that goes back to, you know, the thing that was said earlier is, you know, Jeff, you hit the nail on it. There's a process. I don't know what, that process needs to be communicated and shared. And that's, I think, from Jacob and I talking earlier, we have that understanding that if we can publish that process somewhere, if we know what that process is, that's going to go a long ways in resolving this sort of, well, who's doing what issue that we're running into.
Yeah.
I know, like Tarek said, there have been concerns about, you know, take the map, for example. Tarek and Megan put together the map that was published last year, the tourism dollars paid for it. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the chamber was going to do a winter map. And that
Winter and summer, yeah.
And now we're looking at maybe doing a summer map, and that may or may not happen before we get into the summer months. So there's been some concern and some frustration from the city on things that we had done before now aren't necessarily being followed up on. So that's why we wanted to have this conversation and figure out, okay, where are the hiccups? What can we do better? Both sides. And I think I'm certainly pleased with the conversation that we had, Jacob. I think we're going to make great steps on this moving forward. The concerns that I have, I think, have been addressed. I'm frankly ready to move on. I don't know.
Can I say something first, please?
Yeah.
So, well, I was also at the talent show, and Jacob, you can tell your aunt that my daughter has told that peaches in the can joke about 7 times since then, so that was a hit at our house, apparently. Yeah, it was a good event, I really
Also,
liked
that
it.
poor girl. Not your daughter, the first act.
Yeah, it was great. Let me see here. So, and I think, you know, I think that it should be a more formal process, just because when we have had misunderstandings wherever, they don't seem to have risen from any animosity or any, it's just that when things are more formalized to me in the boards that I'm on that are more formal, it feels like then it's, okay, well, you're going to do this, we're going to do this. And especially when you have goals that you're going to meet or whatnot, I think it gives you more of a structure for what, you know, you can see where you're going a little better when it's clearly defined, I think. And because there are things, for instance, like when we talked about, so when in Paul's letter here where he says we have established some of the most inviting and enjoyable hiking and biking trails in Minnesota, yet many trail enthusiasts haven't a clue they exist. So I think when we have discussed in the past events to utilize those trails, whether they are a 5K or they are a biking event or things like that, it is for that specific reason, which is to draw attention to those trails so that the enthusiasts can in fact know that they exist. And because when we did research on those things, and we talked about it at the meetings, which I have been at every one except for one, and I've always reported back on what we discussed more or less in my council report, but we had done some research and it seemed like people do travel to go to those if you can hit the right market. And that was, I think, what we were trying to do, and there was some miscommunication around that. I don't think that that's on any one side, certainly. I think it's just what happened. So I think it was a good, like I said in the beginning, I don't think this is going to be an entirely smooth process, given that it's new for everyone in the city, the lodging tax. It's only been happening for pretty much a year. And it's, you know, the first few meetings were just hashing out the restrictions about what we could and could not do, because it's new and we didn't know. So I think maybe it would just be best discussed at the next lodging tax meeting, what we want to do, if we want to come up with some goals, if we want to just keep going like we are, what everybody thinks. So I think if we just have time to sit with it, and what we've discussed tonight, we can discuss it at the next meeting and go from there, if that's, Donna and Jacob, if you have any thoughts on that, or Emma, or anybody else who's involved in the committee.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah. And then we're going to start moving it along.
Yeah, definitely, this is, okay. Jeff, there's one part that I'm a little confused about, and when you said earlier, what you, living here and what have you, but most importantly, you're Jacob's dad. And one thing that I would hope for is that you would guide him with the ideas and what needs to be done through guidance instead of insistence. And this is where I think we'd get more of a backup on this, where it's, sometimes the message gets a little confusing, but I want to back Jacob up on this, and hopefully you can guide him along there instead of, it almost seems like you're insisting that some things happen with Jacob coming forward. So that's the only comment that I had.
And Mayor and Council, it's not my job, but I'm going to do that. I think everybody, Jean, especially her and I served in the council, when something was really going to happen, we worked together, we made it happen. When you said we gave up the billboard, Jean and I got the billboard. It's when we limited the number of billboards that went around, we worked together, we got the billboard, that's there forever. Nobody in this room knows that except for Jean and I. And now, of course, everybody, because I said it, but that's what you do. The trail, nobody will remember who the 12 committee members were or what have you. So if you didn't get the minutes, ask for the minutes. If you want the minutes tomorrow, again, I'll advise them right here, who's going to fax or email the minutes to Tark, and then he can share them with everyone. There's great ideas, they've been doing it. And so, again, let's keep working together, but there is a disconnect, but it's not just from the chamber or from the lodging tax, it's both ways, I think, so.
Yeah. All right. Jacob and Donna, anything? I guess let me, Jacob, just ask the question I was going to get to is, so these minutes, do we get them just by emailing you? Can we do that in the future going forward, or how are those typically disseminated?
Yeah, all the meeting minutes are available by request. Nobody's requested them for me, and also for the actual members of the committee themselves will be having the minutes too with them.
Okay.
So,
Then I think that addresses it. I guess I would like maybe a follow-up in a few months, but maybe, Jacob, we just schedule a time where you, me, and Tarek can go grab a cup of coffee and chat about it informally. I don't know that we need to do this again.
I do think we need, like, Megan and Tarek need to report back to all of us
Yeah.
for what's happening, because we're not hearing. And I need to do that better for the chamber, too. And I get the chamber minutes every month, and I can always send them on to the rest of you. So
Yeah.
I think the communication is needed.
Yeah, I mean, I might be kind of shortening it when I make council reports, usually tend to be kind of long-winded, so I do tend to shorten it a little bit, but I can make sure to report a little more in-depth on what we've discussed, sure.
I would like a motion, though, formally appointing Megan and Tarek as city members to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. So that way, they are there formally, and it's something that we review annually and take care of as part of all of our other committee appointments. Unless somebody disagrees with me on that, but I think that that's warranted. Is anybody willing to make that motion? Otherwise, we'll move on.
It's a good motion. I'll make the motion.
Okay, there's a motion by Soini appointing Megan and Tarek as city advisory members to the lodging tax subcommittee, whatever it's called. My brain's gone to mush on it, but.
Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Lodging tax, so I had it. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Hertzberg. All right, so the motion is to appoint Megan and Tarek as the members to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Any further discussion on that motion?
I was just gonna say, that's kind of how we do the community ed person that goes, and for me, going to the chamber, it's just, then every year we can see who's the one going to that, because it changes.
Sure.
That's all.
Who's tasked with reporting back on it?
They don't, they might have more of a voting right. I don't have one. I'm an advisory member.
Yeah, and I do that for the community ed, so I can just start thinking of it in the same way and making sure that I give the same amount of coverage as to what's occurred during the meetings.
All right, calling the question, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
I'm undecided,
I'm just-
so I'll just abstain.
Yes or no, Paul?
There is no abstain, yes or no?
All those in favor indicate by saying
Staying for the
aye.
heard of it.
He said yes.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Not voting makes it a yes.
All right, so then, because Kristen is so graciously agreeing to jump all over the map with us, we're going to go back up to new business A, page 8 of our agenda, the motion to create an ad hoc library board. So this comes back to the meeting that we had last week, where we discussed with Steve Peterson, along with, who else was there with us?
Me,
What, was it just Steve? The three of us and Steve?
Randy.
Yes, Randy Schaefer was there. Thank you. I knew there was another face at the table.
I feel like, yeah, is that, hold on.
That was it.
That was it.
Back in my diary.
Yeah, so Megan and I, along with Tarek, met with Steve Peterson and Randy Schaefer to talk about the status of the library and where that's going. The architect has come back with some preliminary plans. I took a look at the sketches. I think that they look pretty incredible for what we might be able to do with that Washburn space. But we are at the point where if we're gonna start doing things, we need to have some, contrary to what Commissioner Bertram said, I think we need to have a little bit of formality in making recommendations to the council. And reporting back on where things are at so that this council can stay informed and move forward.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful for us to do an ad hoc library board. I know the last time we did it was sort of just to look at the limited issue of changing the location.
Yeah.
I think the new purpose would be really committing to remodeling or building the new library, but expanding that space and how that looks and making recommendations. We have a blank on our sheet here tonight for council representatives. I think we would want to open it up and get some good members of the public as well. Steve Peterson would be good. I'm sure Pat Hansen's going to want to get involved. Randy Schaefer, having access to the community foundation, would be good on there as well, if he's interested. I think 2 council members would probably make sense, rather than just one. I'm guessing I know who the 2 of us might be, Megan. But I know I'd be willing to serve. I'm guessing Megan would be as well. I don't know if anybody else would want on it. But I think tonight we should have a motion on whether or not such a committee should exist and what it should look like. My thought is 2 council members, try and get somebody in from the township along with
The library board.
the library board. So,
The Friends of the Library.
yeah. So
Steve is telling
2, 1,
You want to
maybe a 6-member committee?
I'll make the motion to create an ad hoc library board and appoint Sean Winke and Megan Brick to the board as council representatives.
How many other members are going to be on that board, Paul?
4.
Okay, so there's a motion by Paul Thielen to create an ad hoc library board consisting of 6 members, with myself and Megan Brick as the council member appointees. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Soini. Any further discussion? I will note that I will post something on Facebook. Hopefully we can get something posted on the website as well. We'll ask people to submit letters of interest and hopefully get that on, if not our next council meeting, then maybe the second one in May. so we can get that board up and running. That's kind of how I saw it.
Do you think 6 is too few, or I was thinking 8 might be better? This is a big project.
Maybe we start with 6 and see what the interest is?
Yeah, I mean, if we have 8 good qualified people,
Yeah.
township or city, I think we should go with 8. If we only got 6 that are interested. But I think I'd like to amend the motion up to 8.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
All right, so there's a motion to amend the motion up to 8. Is there a second on the motion to amend?
I'll second that.
Okay. Jean has seconded the motion to amend. I'm waiting for Kristen's hand to stop moving.
And I'm still happy with the 2 council reps. That's
Yeah, I was,
from the council.
I was on the ad hoc committee before I was on the council, the previous one, and it's a project, if I get the chance, I'd really like to see through, so.
All right, so right now we have an outstanding motion for 6 members, 2 council, 4 community. There's a motion to amend that to be 8 members, 6 community, 2 council,
Up to.
up to 8. So just on the motion to amend, up to 8. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. That carries. Now, on the motion to create an ad hoc library board with up to 8 members and appointing myself and Megan as council representatives, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That carries. Clear as mud, Kristen? Okay. So glad you're out here. Otherwise, I would have just done it all without knowing where you were at. Okay. Ron, we've got some lease agreements.
We do 2 airport hangar agreements. One is an existing tenant, one is a new. Currently, we are 100% full. However, we do not have anybody left on the waiting list. So, but that could change. Spring is here, and this is generally the time of year when a lot of pilots move around. So,
Right. So we have 2 lease agreements, one between Rick Wolter and the other one with Tom Faber. We're looking for a motion to approve those agreements.
I'll make the motion to approve the airport T-hangar lease agreements between the city of Painesville, Rick Walter and Tom Faber.
I have a motion by Hertzberg as stated on the action sheet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brick. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. All right. Resolution 23-12, council member per diems and mileage. I apparently was nominated to give a report. This came about, gosh, it was a few months ago. Neil and I attended a League of Minnesota Cities meeting in the afternoon, and then I went on to attend a Stearns County Municipal League meeting that night. And I raised the question of, historically, what have members done in terms of claiming the per diem? I just claimed the $50 because it was less than 4 hours, but I thought there was probably a decent argument to be made that between the 2 meetings, there might be $50 a piece or whatever it was. Talked to Jen a little bit about it, discussed mileage. We talked about it at policies and procedures and sort of said, you know, does the employee handbook apply to us? No, not really, because it says that it only applies to city employees, not the council. There's also a question of what do we do with all of the meetings that take place around town. Historically, the council hasn't generally been paid a per diem. We sort of discussed the policies and procedures that if someone is going to be going to a meeting for 2 or more hours, even if that meeting is in town, it should be eligible for a per diem. If it takes place during the day, that's money that I can't earn. I'm taking time off of work. Megan might be taking time off of work. I know Neil has a very busy work schedule some days, so that's difficult for him. But, you know, we sort of landed on, yeah, we're all expected to do some basic things, and that means, you know, that taking time off, we do that getting into this job, but 2 hours seem to be sort of the happy medium for that. There's also an incentive for room sharing. That's in paragraph 3, so that if members are willing to share a hotel room, there's a little bit of an additional incentive for doing so and saving the city some money in the process. So the incentive would be that each member who shares a room would get 1/4 of the cost of the hotel room, so the city still saves 50% of the cost of a room, because 2 members were willing to share. It also mandates that no mileage is going to be paid unless we're carpooling, except in those events where it's not possible. Any questions about where it came from, or?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So we've got a meeting coming up this week, I believe at the shop. If that lasts 2 hours, would we be eligible to put in for the $50?
No, this is only non-council or committee meetings.
Okay.
Only what?
Non-council or committee.
League meetings,
Oh,
Stearns County meeting, something that's not related to our business.
And Stearns County typically isn't 2 hours.
Yeah, it is, by the time you eat and stuff.
Then that has to get modified in paragraph 2.
I think the other thing is that, part of it came about with like these informal library meetings, and that would go away once we form an ad hoc committee. But some of them have been longer than a couple of hours, or some of the meetings with Nature Energy have gone a bit long. Those would theoretically, at Tarek's discretion as the person approving it, those could qualify under this policy.
well, is it, because I remember it was called into question before when I had put in per diem when I went to the Capitol. So is this something where it's going to be like that, where, people need, because it just seems like we're going to be taking up an awful lot of time, like discussing and voting on.
I think this would resolve that. Maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it can be up to everybody's discretion because,
Usually if we've put in for per diem and they're not, Belinda will question whether or not it's one that's covered, and then we can decide that.
Can you see in paragraph 2 where it says $50 for any meetings?
Between
4
2
hours.
and 4 hours.
Right, so I guess that's where I just got confused of saying if we go to a council working session, that's still a meeting.
Yeah.
What we should do is put
But
a,
it's a council or committee meeting.
Yeah.
So it's a council meeting.
so what we should do is just have for any meetings other than council or committee.
Yep, that's the first sentence.
Yeah, for any meeting other than council or committee.
I guess, it's up to your discretion if you want to claim it or not, too, because, I talk a lot, so I'm not going to claim every time I meet with somebody it goes over 2 hours, because if I meet with
Historically-
somebody, it's going to happen.
We've never paid per diem for any meeting that was in the city,
Right.
no matter if it was,
Yeah.
no matter what it was. If you didn't have to go out of town, we didn't get paid for it. It's part of our monthly.
Right. And I guess, I just, I don't know. I know the budget's tight. I guess I don't see even though it would, be a benefit to all of us financially, I guess I don't see a reason to change that.
So we want to keep that part in there? Okay. So then, the first sentence could just read it, per diem will be paid for any meeting outside the city of Painesville that is longer than 2 hours in length.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Neil, any opposition to that?
No.
Okay. So, we can make that adjustment and bring it back to the next committee for our next council meeting. All right. And we'll bring that back with that change. Going on then, Ron, your holiday lights, want to sell those off?
Yes, we do have all the holiday lights in, and we do have the 14 now that we can dispose of or need to dispose of somehow. And would start with declaring them surplus property and sending them out. I know at a previous meeting several months ago, it was talked about doing something other with them, but I guess that's...
Couldn't get any interest in it.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to declare the 14 Snowflake holiday streetlights as surplus property and authorize advertisement for bids.
Great, there's a motion by Soini as stated on the action sheet. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Thielen. Any further discussion?
Ron, would they be of any use during the tree lighting or no?
With these,
Yeah, I don't know how, like what kind of shape they're in, I guess, or if they'd be of any,
they're gonna need to be completely rewired, or new
Okay.
new strings on them.
I withdraw my question.
All right.
Just wanted to check.
So then, with the motion to declare them surplus, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Motion carries. All right. The Gazebo Park Fire Pit.
Something the park board has talked about a number of times, and we did get two prices, and with the low being the $11,122.50 from the landscaping of Eden Valley there. Design-wise, 24 foot in diameter, 3 foot fire pit right in the center with 3 different sitting areas around the outside. I guess the one thing we don't do to the weather, we don't have it sited exactly where it was going to go. So wherever we do put it, the additional cost here is going to be running a sidewalk or something over to it, because it will have to be ADA accessible. So that part is not included in here.
And that would not be included in either invoice, right?
Correct.
No, correct.
Yes. And I guess the only thing, that's where do we take this out of? And I know there was some talk about fundraising, but the only place I know right now we could take it out of would be the park CIP. And if there is fundraising, it would have to reimburse it.
Yep.
Sure. So this conversation was kind of born out of a policies and procedures discussion. We took a look at revising our ordinance to allow for city-sanctioned fires in order to accommodate things like the tree lighting ceremony last year. Never a good look when the city violates its own ordinances, so let's fix that going forward. And I don't remember, one of us just sort of spitballed the idea of what if we just had a full city fire pit in there?
It was you.
Wasn't me? You know,
Neil and I agreed with you. We thought it was a good idea.
some putz decides to put everything on policies and procedures agendas, and then his mind starts running all together. We can't remember what we talked about.
Well, this takes the heat off of me for next year then.
Yeah. But I thought we discussed doing like a buy a brick fundraiser. Did we ever look into that at all? I mean, I thank the park board for taking it over, but did we ever look into what the buying brick fundraising would look like?
I feel it was touched on at the park meeting. I
We
don't know
did.
if we formalized it, but I feel like we talked about it.
We did like $100 a brick and then have their name engraved, but then we didn't know what the cost of engraving someone's name would be on a brick. Maybe Ron, we talked about it, but we didn't, I don't think you looked into it or I looked into it.
Yeah, as far as I can recall, it was talked about at one meeting, but it really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think at the Legion for theirs, it's like 250 to get a.
300.
Do you think,
300 now? I know it was at least 250.
do you think the school has that capability?
Probably.
I think the Legion ones, the engraving was like 50.
Oh, maybe.
But they're big, you know,
They're much bigger, yeah.
Do you have that ability?
At school? No. I bet they could at school, though.
Why doesn't the laser engraver also work on rocks?
They might at
Check
school.
with the Innovation Lab.
Yeah, we could do that. I have community ed coming up fairly soon. I could check then.
What is our CIP budget looking like for parks right now?
Currently, I believe it's 126,000 in there. However, the majority of that was going to be used for the shelter. I believe we have 40,000 coming into the CIP this year. Plus, if we do get the grant for the shelter, we will, it will be a grant for 2024 build. So I think we would be okay.
And we'll continue to fundraise for the shelter as well if we do get the grant.
And we can do, because the fire pits were kind of a hit at the tree lighting, this year we could do just a free will donation too, because if we're doing s'mores again, kind of retroactively do some fundraising for it then as
Have
well.
Santa's bags in there.
Yeah, fill it up.
Well, I think I'll make the motion to approve the bid from Landscaping Plus of Eden Valley in the amount of $11,122.50 for fire pit at Gazebo Park with funds to come from the CIP of Park and Tree.
Okay, and a recommendation to talk to the school about fundraising opportunities?
Yes.
Engraving.
Brady?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe find some money.
so there's a motion by Soini to approve the bid from Landscape Plus of Eden Valley for a fire pit at Gazebo Park with funds to come from the park CIP and to engage in discussions with the school about possible engraving and fundraising opportunities. Is there a second? I'll come to you after we have a second. Okay, second by Neil, and then Neil has a comment.
Ron, does that include the reseeding, cleanup, and the class 5?
Yes, it does.
So the only additional would be sidewalk, depending on...
Sidewalk or whatever we want to do to,
Yeah.
Good.
And if we could get it close to one of the existing sidewalks, it wouldn't be as, try to squeeze it in there.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah?
That the photo here with the lights on, you see that, Sean?
Yep.
Can we send a copy of that to the press? Because they need, not only do they need things to print, but this would also be good for the community to take to have a,
sorry, go ahead.
just to have an idea of what's coming.
I guess the one we're proposing does not have those lights in.
Yeah, it's slightly different.
Do we have any type of graphic for what we have in mind?
Well, he could come to...
There was one, but
Well, we have a little bit of just that design that's enclosed in your pocket, but one thing we need to do yet is pick out colors and
Sure.
et cetera.
Yeah.
So we could,
It's just as well to wait till it's done, and then he can come do a article on it.
yeah, or, I mean, if we decide that we want to, we could get, more of a spec drawing made up too. It just, we don't really have it yet, so.
All right, calling the question then. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Well, I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be awesome.
It will be a nice asset to the,
Right on your backyard.
I want my name on
It'd
a
be a
brick.
little
so
extra work for
I'll sign
Public
up for that.
Works, because you're gonna have to clean out the pit a few times.
most of the, a couple times a year would be it. I would
The
think.
tops, yeah.
And Ron doesn't do that physical labor. He doesn't, he delegates.
All right. We want to work with Camco again for our crack sealing?
That is correct. We have the two prices, with the low being from Camco at 17,050 there. The company that we had generally worked with from over in Belgrade is no longer in business, so we didn't have any choice but to go to Aztec, and you can see the difference. But this is, even Camco had about a 20-cent per pound increase over last year. This amount is budgeted in our street budget, so it is very important and vital to the streets that we do keep them sealed, protect the water from penetrating into that subsoil.
I know this winter's been really easy on the streets, so I don't notice a lot of potholes out there, but, no. Do we have to do anything special this year for addressing those, or do you have?
We will be, we'll do that air injection patching.
Okay.
Generally, we need at least 65-degree weather to get that,
Yeah.
so that's going to be about a month down the road yet.
Yeah, 2, 3 maybe.
There'll be more potholes by then.
If I have to declare another snow emergency, so help me.
More than that.
All right, so we have a recommendation to approve the quote from Camco in the amount of $17,050, funds coming out of our street maintenance budget. Is there a motion to be made?
I move to approve the quote from Camco in the amount of $17,050, funds to come from the street maintenance and repair fund.
Okay, motion by Hertzberg, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brick, as stated on the action sheet. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Carries. Great. Something we talked a little bit about during our Board of Appeal and Equalization is moving our process to what's called the open book meetings. John Springer, the assessor that was here, talked to us a little bit about the process. Basically, it would allow residents more time, and instead of coming to us in April They would go directly to, as I understand it, to the county board, give them more time to present their case, and hopefully come to an agreement with the assessors themselves. We discussed it a little bit during the meeting, if we wanted to do that. Don't know if anybody else has stewed on the idea anymore, if they have feelings one way or another. We also talked about possibly just doing our Board of Appeal and Equalization sometime in May to give residents the same type of opportunity while still keeping the local control on it.
I think we should try the 3-year option and see how it goes. If people don't like it or want to, you know, we can go back. That's just my,
Okay.
I've been to lots of them, years and years. Usually nobody's there, hardly ever.
Neil, you're the one who wanted to keep the local control.
If, I'm okay with the 3-year to try,
Okay.
then see how we feel and how, if we have complaints or, part of me likes local control, but there hasn't been hardly any activity the last 3 years, so evidently, and maybe people would be happy negotiating with the county.
But I think, you know, I was stewing on it. Last year we had one, and it was Bill Fuchs with the church valuation. And that was something where, once we got here, we came to an agreement right away. There was no dispute. I think the assessor got right on board and said, yep, that was fine. I don't recall us overruling the assessor in that case.
Over the years, we've had a couple denials, and
Yep.
if people wouldn't let the assessor come in their home, that's pretty much an automatic
Yep, or they
denial.
came a year too late. or-
And that probably won't change, whether we do it or the county. So I'm okay with the 3-year. And unless there's more discussion, I'll make the motion for the 3-year.
Okay, I have a motion to move to the open book process for a trial period of 3 years. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Soini. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay. Special city council working session, because we haven't had enough.
Why not? Let's have it at Hilltop and I'll claim per diem.
It's out of town, right?
Well,
That's what I'm saying. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm a no on Thursday, May 11th, and I'm a no on Monday, May 22nd. Other than that, I'm okay.
I think we should do Wednesday, May 17th, because it's my birthday, and that means that everybody needs to be present. Yeah.
It's not on our list.
Fine. All right. If you guys hate birthdays, just say that. Okay.
Okay, I am just saying, the last time you all scheduled a meeting that wasn't on Jen's list was a big to-do.
It was.
That's true.
And I can't, the 17th, you'll have to come to the meatball supper at our church.
Ooh, maybe I will.
Now, you don't.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. Meatball supper / Megan's birthday.
There's no issues with holding a council meeting at a church.
No. And the 18th is actually my son's birthday, so I might be busy then.
I like doing it on the 22nd, an hour before our council meeting, because then we have to finish by 6.
Yeah, that is a point.
He said Neil said he couldn't.
Oh, that's right, you said that was one of your no days, huh?
Yeah, it is. I can make council, but I got something going.
The 25th and the 30th don't work for me.
I don't like going at like 30, 31, because that's a holiday weekend.
Yep.
That's actually on a Wednesday, though.
How about Thursday, the 18th, and call it a day?
I can't do Thursday, it's my son's birthday.
Oh, that's right, you said that.
So was there an issue with the 11th? What was the issue there?
23rd, Neil said he couldn't with the 11th.
I have another meeting that night.
I like Sean's idea of the 22nd.
But Neil can't do it. Oh.
Gosh, Neil, you're being problematic today.
23rd.
23rd or 25th?
I
23rd.
can't do the 25th.
Who's gonna make a motion for the 23rd?
Me, so moved.
Megan has made a motion to set a special city council session for Tuesday, May 23rd at 6 PM. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Soini. Any further discussion?
Is that at this location?
Yes. All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay, we dealt with Centricare earlier while Andy was still here. Moving on to the nuisance properties report. Tarek, page 61 of our agenda.
Yes, Chief and he'll give you an update on the properties he's already addressed, but we've identified 15 properties around town that should be receiving or should receive a letter from us. We haven't sent out letters yet because of the way the weather has been, so now that the weather is getting much better, we're in a better position to send out these letters. But maybe Chief, give a quick update on what you guys have done and what they've been instructed to do.
I'll have to go without the microphone unless Kristen makes me mad.
We gotta fix our.
Okay.
All right, so I went back and I provided Tarek with information. So far, at least 9 of those properties have been addressed last year that are on that list of, that Tarek and I had come up with. So my guys have been instructed for those properties that they were dealing with last year to go back and touch base with those property owners now that the weather has improved. They've also been instructed to go back around town and to identify the other properties and start addressing those as well. We've established a procedure that's in place that they will work with the property owners to abate whatever the violation is within a month. If that's not done, then they will take other action besides that. So most of the properties should probably be cleaned up within a week or two. There's not a ton of really bad properties around town, but that's kind of the general plan right now. Those properties that were addressed last year will probably have a little bit different approach just because they were told last year to clean it up, so.
Okay. All right, so let's bring this back to our second meeting in May. Has anyone's got another thought?
So the letters are going out soon?
This week?
We will, are we going to send letters to all the properties or only the ones that we have not yet addressed or contacted?
We'll only send the properties that we have not addressed.
Okay.
And those properties will be given to, the 2 officers who've been tasked with doing this to address, so.
I guess,
Oops, go
you can go ahead.
ahead. Those 9 will not get a fine?
That's not that there won't, but we're already working with them, so it'd be pointless to resend them another letter. Because they will go and make face-to-face, they should be making face-to-face contact with them to discuss, cleaning up their property. Doesn't mean that the officer won't eventually issue a citation to them, it just means that they'll do a face-to-face conversation with them.
I think we want to be fair across the board. If we're going to give 5 a fine, I think all 15 should get fines.
Yep.
Well, and that's why we've established, a procedure, and I laid out for them what my expectations are. Give them a month. Some of these properties, especially those that are bad, they didn't get that way in a night. They're not going to get cleaned up in a night, We look for progress. If somebody moves a fridge and the rest of their yard is complete trash, well, that's not progress. But if they remove 50% of the stuff in their yard in the time we've given them, it's in our best interest to continue to work with them to get the other 50% removed.
Especially if, I know some of them have to pay to, have their things removed or have people come in and haul them out. So if they have to pay a fine on top of that, it's probably not going to be, probably not going to get the job done, so.
I guess I have to chime in and say, we started doing the civil abatement process at sort of the advice of Chief and then Bill Spooner saying, there's only so much that a citation might accomplish. I'm leery about now backtracking and going back to, I agree, if we've issued citations to other ones in the past, we should follow that same process. But we've now outlined that Tarek was going to send out letters to these property owners and we were gonna start down the civil abatement path as well. I don't want to abandon that and create this sort of dual track system that we sort of been on. So I think all 15 properties should receive a letter, and maybe part of that letter can be, let's formulate a plan for cleaning it up. And, you know, maybe a citation can follow that. But we started down the civil abatement path. I think that's the way we've got to go with all of these.
Yeah,
Fair is fair.
we want to be consistent in what we do and make sure that we're not applying different rules to different people. We want to make sure that we're being consistent, and everybody gets a chance to clean up their property or address whatever the nuisance is on the property. So that's the purpose of doing this, and yeah, I agree, we should not forget about the abatement as kind of, you know, somewhere that, or a solution that we can apply later on if there is no progress on that property.
Well, so one of the things that we had talked about is, you know, sending out the letters and then coming back for a report. If those letters can go out this week yet, then they should arrive before Friday if they can go out tomorrow. Saturday's the environmental cleanup, so that'd be a good time to get rid of
A lot of things, yeah.
the report coming back next month can include, maybe it can, maybe it can't, depending on data privacy, but it may include things like how many citations have been issued, or where are we at in the process, what efforts have been made, and then we as a council can decide, like, okay, we're not ready to move forward on abatement yet because this property had been cited before, they haven't gotten one yet, so we want to keep it law enforcement for right now. But I kind of think that we just need to see a report on all 15. And I would, part of that report would include what steps is the PD taking in terms of that.
I think the important thing to remember here is civil abatement, and the reason we've had the discussions on some of the civil abatement is we've run into situations where properties just are refusing to comply. And when we start talking about, you know, people's properties, they're extremely emotional. It's a very emotional topic and what they can do on them. So the civil abatement, as I see it, isn't necessarily abandoned. You know, we send out letters and we make contact with these people face to face. If they don't clean it up, we take the next steps. If they still don't clean it up, that's where I see the civil abatement as an appropriate step, because at that point, we can continue to write tickets, but at the end of the day, it's still not going to clean up the property. The goal of civil abatement is to take care of the issue once and for all. And when we're not getting compliance, that, to me, that's when it's appropriate. You know, so the steps that have been taken, the steps that we currently take, don't remove our ability to, you know, proceed with civil abatement down the road. It's just that, you know, we're going to give our homeowners the opportunity to clean up their property before we have to go to those lengths.
And that's fair, but I think the council, I still want to see a report on these properties, because there's the one, you know, near the school that I've heard regular issues about. And there's been discussion about how that property's been cleaned up, there's things going on. What is that? I don't know what can be reported. That's why I think it would be helpful to see our nuisance statute says the city administrator can make a report, and we can go from there on what needs to happen. That's what we decided at the last time this came up that we would do. I would like to see us continue down that path. It doesn't mean that we vote to have a public hearing on everything, but fair is fair. We've got to figure out what does that process look like. And maybe the answer is, you know, before we're willing to go down the public abatement, we want to see, you know, 2 citations or 3 citations. I don't know what that magic number is, but we can't decide that without seeing the report on what's been done, what's out there, and who's complying and who's refusing.
So when you're talking about letters going out this week, you are not talking about letters of civil abatement, or you are? I'm
I am
confused now.
talking about level letters.
Because my concern, well, and first I wanted to say that I think it'd be a good idea to let the people know who are actively attempting to tidy up their properties that we do have the cleanup this weekend.
Yep.
and that there are probably, although a week's a short amount of time, there are probably some service organizations that would be helpful in getting some of those things over to the cleanup site if necessary. My concern is, so the property on Stearns, which I would like to see resolved as much as anyone. I feel like there were a set of parameters that were set out as far as having a meeting, and that didn't happen. And I feel like that's a bad look for the city going forward, if that meeting is not had. I feel like it's perfectly fair and perfectly reasonable to put time limits on that meeting, and it's, I think that it should be gone into with the understanding that nothing could happen. You could sit down with policies and procedures or whatever all you want, and they could still say no. That's how it works. But my concern about anything like that is that once the letters of abatement go out, we cannot have discussions with anyone who's receiving them, correct? Because then it's moving into the quasi-judicial space.
Right.
So,
Send them out. We can have, my thought is send them all out. And these issues about things, that can all be flushed out if we go to a public hearing. But that can also be something that we discuss when we discuss whether or not we set a public hearing. That can be a criteria on whether or not a hearing is justified.
Okay.
But I think unless we start taking action on it,
Yeah.
if we just keep kicking the proverbial cans down the road, nothing's gonna be resolved.
But, so if somebody gets a letter, or, once the letters go out, we're not allowed to have communication with the people who are getting them. But, so if we are deciding whether or not to hold a public hearing, can we then decide that we're going to at least have a meeting? Or is that breaking the,
Well, as far as I see it, the letter would simply say, essentially, look, your home is potentially in violation of the nuisance ordinance. I'll be issuing a report to the council on this date, at which point they may or may not vote to have a public hearing on it. And, for your information, here's a community cleanup date that's coming up this weekend. We're not setting a public hearing, we're not setting any of that yet. It's simply advising them that, we are taking the firmer stance, and this is across the board. Which is part of why I don't want to get into, well, these 9 have been working with the PD, these 6 aren't.
right?
But then we're kicking the can down the road again.
So that's why I said, let's do
30 days.
I think 30 days is fair. I'm just saying that when I asked Bill Spooner, he said that, there could be conversations up until the time the letter went out. And I just feel like whether, we feel that anything is going to change or not, that the property owner in particular there was promised a conversation that didn't happen.
Well,
And I would like to see it happen, and we can't if that letter goes out. However, I don't know what steps we can take to make sure that the things are happening or not. It's just my concern that it was said that it would happen and it didn't.
I still think, end of the day, we have an ordinance that's in place, and discussion of potentially changing that ordinance doesn't justify violating it in the meantime. We have a state right now that's looking, and this is an extreme comparison, I understand that, but the state of Minnesota is looking at moving and passing, legalizing marijuana. In 3 weeks, it's probably going to be legal in the state. Until then, it's still illegal.
I know.
And that's the law that's in place, and no matter how many times we can sit down and talk about whether or not it should or shouldn't be,
Yes.
it's not.
But I feel,
So-
because the comparison to me would be, for instance, if somebody believes that they have a medical marijuana coverage, but they don't, obviously they're still in violation. But if, from what I have heard from the owner of the property, he believed that he had taken certain steps that made what is going on his property in accordance with the ordinance. It isn't, but that is what he believes. So I just have concerns if, people are told that they're going to get to have a meeting and they don't. I don't think it's a good look. I don't know how to get around it because I do feel that the letters of civil abatement should go out. And then, like I said, you're entering into that strange quasi-judicial space, but I just, I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me, is what I'm saying.
I think we should get the letters sent out tomorrow. Neil?
I have a little heartburn and concern that 9 properties were addressed last year, and they still are not into compliance.
Correct, but we had early snow last year too, so they got addressed in the fall.
Okay?
And then,
I mean, if we're gonna come down hard on one, you gotta come down hard on all.
Yep.
It's not hard, it's
So I
still
like
because
the letter in 30 days, because everybody's being treated equally. And it's just like you have an employee that's not matching up, and before you get rid of them, you need a file about that thick. And that's what we got here.
But if things are frozen to the ground, there's gotta be some, but I think that's why it's, you know, a good early start now, just as it's warming up is probably a good idea.
Well, we have a motion on the letters, it's been delayed, but,
I can make the motion to move forward with the civil abatement hearings.
Or not,
Let's-
letters.
yeah, the letters and the report back at our second meeting in May, maybe?
Well, we waited this long, I suppose a few more weeks isn't gonna hurt us.
Well, you have to do the letters. That is
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of
I
the
know.
civil abatement.
So at this point, I would call for a motion to direct the city administrator to notify the 15 homeowners of the potential for a violation and the potential for an abatement hearing, and to report back at our second meeting in May.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Hertzberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Thielen. The motion is for the city administrator to notify the 15 homeowners of the potential violation, along with the desire to cure, and to report back at our second meeting in May. Any further discussion on that? And again, we're not setting those meetings today. There might be all sorts of reasons why we don't, but that's something to discuss in May. Right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Right, we talked about the lodging tax. Ron, on the bid results for the surplus property.
Okay, the results are in front of you there. We did have, about 4 or 5 items there where we did not get a bid, and obviously some of them are just gonna have to end up being trash. Some of them we may be able to donate.
Okay, looks like we were looking for a motion to accept the bids as listed, and then authorize Ron to donate or trash anything left.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Soini, seconded by Hertzberg, is on the action sheet. Any further discussion?
I do.
Yes.
The desk and the tables, is that something you think Allison at the community center could move?
Very possibly.
If you just have her go look at them and she can tell you, or he can. But, a lot of people can use a table in their shop, or
I'm sure she'd take them.
the phones probably need to go in the dumpster.
I found out that's what they do with them at the community service center. Phones, they throw them away.
I might know somebody who will take them, the guy that helped install them, but I'll call him and see if he wants them first.
Okay. All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. We have a few things for invitation or informational. We have the new hospital tour on Friday from 2 to 6:30. That is preceded by the groundbreaking for the south end of the Highway 23 construction. That's not on here, but I think Tarek sent out a reminder to all of us.
Yep.
Letter from the MPCA, a copy of a request that I made to Canadian Pacific following up on a resident who was doing some legwork on that. Our meeting schedules in May and June, and then along with the notice that LifeLink is going to be using the airport for the hospital construction until they can get the pad installed across from this house that she's so eager for.
Second.
May on the 23rd with Stearns County League at Kimball.
Yep,
That's when we did the special city
It's the
council.
16th. It's the 16th.
yep.
What?
Oh, they
It's
moved
the
it?
16th. No, it always was.
was.
Well, how come?
Yeah, no, it's the 16th.
Okay,
On my daily planner, I was wrong.
All right, then with no further business, we are adjourned. Kristen, are there things for me to sign?
Yes, there are.
I will stop in tomorrow,
Okay.
if that's fine with you,
Should be
just
fine.
because Andy's waiting for me over at the fire department.
Yeah.
So,
Do you, are you going on Saturday? Well, see you Wednesday. We're back.
Is the 28th Alliance
Are you going on Saturday?
Yes.